Marc Miller is the Minister for Crown-Indigenous Relations. He joined us earlier to talk about the National Day, and I began our conversation by asking him where the minister thought we are on the path to reconciliation.
You know, in a couple of ways, in the last 3 years as a minister, 2 years during a global pandemic, you've seen a lot of things move in real time. Obviously, with the need to keep people safe and alive, particularly Indigenous communities, which were multiple times more vulnerable, and how the federal government plays a role in supporting those, and how we broke down silos to make sure people would stay safe and alive. That's more than a simple analogy. It's about a relationship that's built on trust. And when you talk about reconciliation, a precursor to that is truth, trust, patience, all things that are the building blocks of a relationship. These are things that aren't necessarily linear, obvious, or easy. And, as a government, we certainly made mistakes, but we've also made historical investments in Indigenous communities to close socioeconomic gaps, and to make sure that really people are treated in a fair and equitable fashion. In order to do that, and despite really investments that are significant in education, infrastructure, housing, all things that have been highlighted by report upon report, none of this can be done without recognition of a relationship that has to be built on trust, which is often thin and often been broken by the government of Canada. So that recognition is important so that you can move to the next stage, and continue to document and walk that path forward in that spirit of partnership. And too often things are decided by Ottawa, and if there's anything to learn by the pandemic, is Indigenous communities, with the support of Ottawa, were able to protect their own in a better way than we could have done from an armchair.
Can I jump in
Ottawa? So
yeah, let me jump in there.
That's important to me.
Yeah, let me jump in there though, because I think it is important that you said that mistakes have been made. What mistakes are you talking about? How have you learned from those mistakes?
Well, we did set a very ambitious agenda, and I do give a tremendous amount of credit to the Prime Minister, for example, when it comes to boiled water advisories, to say enough is enough, it ends here. And I think that was a shot to the civil service, to all those that live and work for the government of Canada, to say you're going to get the financial resources to go out and work with communities and make sure that this ends. And with that kind of instructions, we've been able to lift close to 80% of the boiled water advisories with the work from communities in order to do that. But certainly along the way, I think we've underestimated needs inside of communities, and needs that are connected and priorities of communities as we work and engage with them. We don't lift those water advisories, communities do, and we don't tell them when and how to do them. So we also have to respect that pace and respect that there are things, for example, when you connect a water system to a 50-year-old school, the community is in their right to say, well, we need a new school. And you may say, well, that isn't necessarily connected to long-term water advisory, but it sure as hell is. And so those are realizations that we've had to make, work in that spirit of respect with communities. It hasn't gone perfectly, but I think we've been able to reorient things and make significant investments in operations and maintenance of systems, building community members up so they advance chemistry and math so they can operate those systems, as well as make historical litigation that has been brought against us stop at the negotiation table, as opposed to advancing to courtrooms, which are not conducive to reconciliation.
You use the word pace, and that brings me to my next point here, because I did speak to Roseanne Archibald, and she was expressing some frustration when it comes to the pace at which the calls to action of the TRC are being met. She says that at this rate it will be about 40 years before the calls to action are actually fulfilled. What do you say to that kind of frustration as we really focus back once again to the National Day? What do you say to the frustration amongst those who believe that the calls to action need to be met much quicker than they are currently?
Well, it's entirely understandable. And I'm not making excuses for it, but clearly during the pandemic, priorities did reorient to keep people safe and alive. It doesn't mean we couldn't walk and chew gum and move forward on a number of things, like the National Council on Reconciliation that is now at third reading, and will have an independent body that will be able to assess the pace as well as the answers to the calls to action, including elements that don't fall within the Government of Canada's purview. For example, the papal apology this summer There's a lot of elements that need to fall into place at the same time, and those are things that we need to seize that opportunity to make reconciliation irreversible, but also the actions that we're taking to respond to those calls to action irreversible. They're not things that are necessarily fixed in time. When it comes to some painful matters that have really shocked the public conscience, like discovery on Marc graves, making sure we have the investments to fulfill calls to action 72 through 76. That's work that is not complete, but there's good financing in communities in about 91 to this date to make sure that communities that choose to do some searches have the financial ability to do so and the mental health supports to do so. Again, I can't speak to timelines, but I know the work that our government does and the emphasis that it's put on the political, the moral, and the financial capital that's put behind it. And I have confidence that we can move forward in partnership with communities to make sure that those calls are answered.
Mr. Miller, thank you so much for answering our questions today. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you, Michael.
And for those who do find these conversations triggering, a reminder, there is help out there. You see on your screen right now the various organizations that you can call to get counseling.